Morning, everyone. Up here at the Karuah, RSL. Yes, what a place. Fantastic. By the way, let me tell you, the Chinese, sensational. Best in town. The Karuah Motor Inn, that's where we're staying. Excellent. Wonderful place to stay. And of course, when you come to Karuah, don't forget to bring your Shimano gear, your fishing gear. The fish are hot, the muddies are hot. These are the sort of days where you should go to the tackle shop. And while you go to the tackle shop, I want to say on the behalf of Shimano, have a look at the new spinning reels. They've got 3 new spinning reels out. They've got the Twin Power XD. That's a good saltwater spinning reel. Then they've upgraded the Ultegra, and you've got the Sedona. And, of course, they've increased the quality of the Trenex in the bait caster and also the Chronarch. So they've got 5 new models out there that are looking terrific. And tackle shop's the way to go.
Bobby, I live on the end of Caravan Head, and one of my neighbours is on the waterfront. Before this big wet, he said he was catching some big whiting. Now, I've fished up and down there. Well, I suppose we've got to get past the coffee shop at Blackfish.
Well, let me tell you, I was talking to one of the guys that works here at the Karuah RSL, and I said to him, because Ross Parr said to me, now, he catches a lot of good fish. And I said, where are you getting them? He said, in the water. So when you come here and you want to talk to the country people, be prepared to get that sort of back answer.
You know, in the days of my youth, we would go with a pump and we get those little planetarium worms. See, that's from my science class. I knew what they were. They're kind of like a centipede thing. And you only had to put a little fraction of that worm, and we would catch good whiting with those.
You guys would be fishing in some, fantastic waters full of fish. So, there's a lot that you could probably tell me. You've probably been fishing a lot longer than I have. That being said, I'm just going to run through some basics today, and if there's any specific questions people want answered, happy to do that. We'll start off, I'll just go straight into it, and we'll go from there. It's so convenient these days to be able to buy worms out of the freezer. They're not nearly as good as live worms, obviously, but beggars can't be choosers. When you're time poor, they're fantastic. You can even get those desiccated worms now, and you just add the salt water to them. They plump out a bit. They're not terrible. You're not going to get dewies and so forth on them really, but you are going to get a lot of dart and some whiting and a lot of bream, but they're not as good. These softer frozen worms, and the ones that also come in the sand, the ones that have that dye in them, they're quite red, they're quite good for whiting and bream, and of course dart eat just about anything. But do most of you use long shank hooks for your worms, or do you use a bait holder style hook? Depending on what you would use, is how you'd pop them up the line. I tend to use off the beach a bait holder hook, just I find that holds the worm up the line a bit, and it also, I feel, in the surf conditions works a bit better. How you going sort of thing. They're not as good as nice live wriggly worms, but they still will work. So that's a nice, easy, straightforward little thing. And you'd pop that down to a running sinker to meet the conditions. With sinkers, you always want to go as light as you possibly can. At times, I'll fish no sinkers. Generally off the beach, though, you are going to need a little bit of lead to get out there. So depending on what the conditions are, if you're fishing a gutter and things like that, if you want it to run, you'd use a rolling sort of ball type sinker. If you wanted it to stay put, you might use a bug type sinker, which will be less inclined to drift down as fast. So another bait off the beach, obviously, is the ubiquitous pippy. So I'll just take that off and throw that into my bucket. So, frozen pippies, again, not as good as ones you collect off the beach yourself. But that being said, again, it's that convenience factor. You know the rules about collecting pippies off the beaches now. I don't need to go through that with you. You're all aware that it's you're not allowed to take them beyond the high tide mark, so forth. When I'm fishing, obviously, taking that, I'll throw that straight back into the surf, and that'll attract the fish around, that smell and so forth, and gives the kids something to find when they're on holidays. So, pippies, particularly frozen pippies, are a very soft bait. Again, whenever you freeze a bait, you are getting a softer bait. You can salt pippies. I find that doesn't, for the convenience factor, I find salted pippies aren't worth the effort. The juice just isn't worth the squeeze in that particular instance. I'm happy to go out and dig for pippies. The only bait I really salt these days is pilchards, because pillies, even the individually quick frozen ones, I find are very soft these days. With your pippy, again, in through the muscle, make sure your hook point is proud, drag that hook up in, make sure your barbs are in, and again another cheeky little half hitch around the bait to keep it nice and straight, and make sure you get plenty of meat in that half hitch. And what self-respecting dart, brim, whiting could resist that? So again, frozen pippy's not as good as a fresh caught pippy that you get yourself, but in terms of the convenience factor, there's definitely a lot to be said for them. Anything you don't know? If you're buying pillies, individually quick frozen pilchards are the way to go. The mass blocked pilchards you'll find are generally always soft, and the bottom layer is going to be quite squished and quite deformed. And at the price you're paying for pilchards, the individually quick frozen ones are basically an eating quality fish. And with any bait, if you're not prepared or wouldn't be prepared as a fish to eat it yourself, you can't really expect a quality fish to eat it. Your rubbish fish will eat anything. Quality fish will look for quality bait. Sort of I generally will pop the ball sinker straight down onto the gangs. Who makes their own gangs? Really? Also, with the gangs, when you make them yourself, it gives you that flexibility, as I've done here, to put a swivel in between each of the hooks. A lot of people use just straight hook to hook to hook. I find that doesn't give you the flexibility with your bait and bait sizes. You're sort of locked in there, and you're also using a 4-hook rig when a 3-hook rig will do. So these are lovely pilchards, actually. I'd be quite happy to throw one of these out for tailor and salmon. They're great individually quick frozen pilchards. As you can see, the eyes nice and bright, the scales are all on, there's no disfiguring, there's no discoloration of the gut lining, it's nice and firm. Great pilchard. You'll know quite quickly when you look even at frozen pilchards, you can see the quality versus the non-quality. You can have a look at frozen pilchards and just tell. You can even smell the bait packet. Frozen fish that has gone off is quite noticeable, so it's worth spending the extra money. Obviously you want to line up your pilchard on your hooks, get a rough idea of where you want each of the hooks to go. I start with the tail, straight through, next one down, and the last one through the eyeball to anchor it. You want to have those hook points as proud as you can. That middle one isn't proud, but it's a very fat, healthy looking pilchard, so that's probably the reason there. But a tailor will certainly bite through that, and a salmon will take that in and crush it up as well. And you'll get the bycatch of dusky flathead, sand flathead, that sort of thing off the beaches as well, and the odd big brim that is sea run. We'll grab these as well. With your tailor fishing and salmon fishing, always rig the pilchard swimming towards you. When you cast out, you want to be dragging it in towards you. Fish don't swim backwards all that often, so you want to have it that way. And with most of those surf species, they are going to attack from the tail first. Salmon with a live bait will tend to eat it head first, but with pilchards and in surf conditions, I don't think that really matters. Often you're going to get the tailor mixed in, bonito and things like that mixed in with the salmon. So you want to fish with the tail towards you. The flexibility makes a big difference as well. The fish can't leverage itself off and bust up your gang. The secret is get a swivel that isn't going to go back over the barb, so you're wanting a reasonably small swivel. But even these small swivels, get a good quality swivel. Yeah, these are number 4s. I think you'd find they're probably rated to easily 40 kilos. You're not going to bust the swivels. The line's going to go long before the swivel is. So, yeah, nice, easy way to do things. And a swivel up the end, of course, to cut down on your line spin with the bait coming through the water. It is going to spin a bit, particularly with these offset hooks. With hooks, I'll be talking about offset and non-offset hooks, and I'll just quickly explain that. Hooks come in offset and non-offset. This is an easier way to demonstrate it. So an offset, the actual hook is off to one side, whereas a straight shanked hook is dead flat. Now the reason you'd use a offset hook is to ensure that when a fish takes the bait head first or tail first, depending on what sort of fish you're after, but for most things that you use live bait for, your jewfish, flathead, John Dory, all that sort of thing will eat a fish head first. Kingfish, all the same, will turn the fish around and eat it head first. With an offset hook, that hook point is nice and proud. With a straight shank hook, when the fish turns it round to eat, that hook can bury back into the bait. So it's one of those small little things, and something that you've got to get right, because if you put it round the wrong way when you do that, looking right, but again, head first and the hook point's buried. So you want to make sure that the hook point will be proud and clear of the bait when the fish eats it head first. And as I say, with live baits and even dead baits, it's not such an issue with pilchards, obviously, but little bream and tarwine and things like that, if you've ever had to get one of those off the hook, you'll soon discover they're spiky little buggers, and fish have the same problem. But when their fins are down and all the spikes are down, they're very streamlined to help them get through the water. That's the way fish have to eat things, head first, particularly little fish. With prawns, also, they will eat prawns head first, but they'll actually bring them round in their throat and swallow them down. So I'll show you a nifty way of rigging a prawn. I'll get a couple of these. They're still quite frozen, so I'm just going to use the body heat in my hand to thaw them out a bit. Most people, if you were going to ask most people how they rig a prawn, they'd say, get a standard sort of suicide hook, and they'd sort of pop the hook in, through the back, so it was going thusly. Is that about right, or has anybody got a dispute that? Anybody got a different way of bringing up a prawn?
Yeah, don't forget, if you've got a question, I've got some prizes for those with the questions.
I'm happy to learn. Yep, how would you pop it in? Right, so going like that? Okay. No, so something like that? Okay. Now remember, as I said, with the fish, generally they're going to try and avoid spikes when they're eating. You notice with your prawn, he's got a dirty great spike at the front, and the same thing at the tail end. So he will actually bend the prawn over, just while so your hook is sort of getting covered up a little bit. Still very effective way to rig, but there is a cheeky way to do it just that little bit better. It's a little bit more fiddly, takes a little bit of time and a little bit of practice, but it does increase your fishing with prawns tenfold, and it's a fantastic way to get those cheeky brim at marinas. If you can see a big brim, and you know the ones I'm talking about, they're always at marinas and things like that. You see them swimming around, you'll throw in a handful of prawns, they'll take the ones quite happily. As soon as you throw one with a hook in, they're a bit...
Most people will just take the head off and just chuck it away, or they may peel it up to the tail and then put a half hitch above the tail. If you go to those dollar shops and there's a green bead, a fluorescent green bead, just a small one, put that above the hook. Now what you do is you peel the head. Don't throw the head away. Peel the head. Leave it on. And then get a little piece of squid and just put it on the end of the hook. So what happens is the fish, the bait hits the water, all the stuff from the head becomes a burley. The little fish see this, they go whack. Meanwhile, it's a lot harder to get the squid off. So you've got a greater chance of catching a fish. That's my little tip.
All right. I'll show you how to do the Windy Banks swimming prawn just quickly. With it, first thing you need to get is yourself some of these mustard Aberdeen style hooks. They're a semi-long shank hook, straight shank, so not offset. Nice thin gauge. This is about a size 1. So, all right, what you want to do, you want to pop your hook in behind the head, like so, and you want to slide him along 2 segments along and take him back out. Plastic nice and straight. You want to thread the hook down another 2 segments. Pull the hook through like so, not all the way, just leave the eye in there. Grab your main line, take out the slack, and you want to gently pull your hook straight back in like that. Then you do yourself a cheeky little half hitch around the spike of the prawn. In fact, you can do a couple of half hitches around the spike of the prawn. And the spike of the prawn is generally nice and serrated, so it holds your half hitches very, very well. So you can fish that like a soft plastic, or you can fish it with a running sinker style. And what that prawn is going to do with a running sinker style rig, he is going to swim in the current, sitting there just like a live prawn. He's not going to be swimming backwards as if you rig them going backwards. He's not going to, prawns don't swim backwards, they swim forwards, they flick backwards, but they swim forwards. So he's just going to sit in the current nicely, looking very, very lively. When the fish takes it, he's going to fold it round. Everything he's going to get is hook. So you could, but it'd kill the prawn very quickly. So if you've gone to the trouble of getting live prawns, with live prawns, I'd use a Demon fine wire circle hook. Yeah, one of the very small sizes. Just pop that through the tail segment, throw him out, let him flick around quite happily out there. But with frozen prawns, your Hawkesbury style prawns, school style
Steve,
prawns.
If I just may interrupt there, I like to fish with yabbies.
Yep.
Would you use that same technique for yabbies?
Again, yes, you could. I actually am a big saltwater yabby fan for both salt and freshwater. It's amazing what an effective bait saltwater yabbies are in freshwater. And I never knew this until Paul Burt told me one day on the radio when I was in at the High Tide studio, and he said, "Oh, have you ever tried saltwater yabbies for yellow belly?" I said, "That's just ridiculous. How would that work?" I'm here to tell you, unbelievably effective. Frozen saltwater yabbies, still a soft bait, but if you fish them gently up against structure, they will outfish live shrimp. I don't know, maybe it's the smell, I don't know what it is, but they are dynamite freshwater bait for yellow belly, silver perch, catfish. I haven't got a cod on them yet, but I haven't really fished for cod with them. I'm sure you could probably do that.
I predominantly fish floaters outside for snapper.
Yep, great.
Using that rig there, they'd be sitting in the column just ready to eat it, wouldn't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. With that, you could upsize your hook.
Yep.
To something thusly, but in a non-offset style. This one's offset, but I'd use those on your Crystal Bay prawns and your banana prawns.
So you use a non-offset because it'll be straight behind the tail where he's going to strike.
He will twist otherwise.
Yep.
He will twist. And I didn't explain it there, but I generally do one half hitch one way and then the other half hitch I reverse, and that slows down on the spin as well.
Also, I've seen a lot of people use cooked prawns. Is it better to use naturally coloured prawns over cooked prawns? Because when you flick them with plastics, usually the brighter colour gets the fish's eye.
It depends. If I was fishing a marina near, at Nelson Bay, somewhere like that, I'd quite happily use a cooked prawn because it's what the fish are used to eating. You'll find a lot of people use royal reds and things like that outside, but in terms of cooked prawns, I find that they go quite flaky and brittle. They sort of fall apart on the hooks. I have been there and tried that. Generally, I'll use raw prawns all the way.
Raw prawns about.
And for snapper fishing, absolutely dynamite way to get your plate size fish. You're not going to have too much success, I wouldn't imagine, on real big fish because the smaller fish are just going to pick your baits to pieces. But if they're there, they'll eat. But so will everything else. So will rat kingfish and sweep and all that sort of thing. So it's a little bit more finessey around oyster leases, estuary structure. A rig like this is just dynamite unweighed, and I'll just fish it like a plastic. I'll just cast straight into there.
Okay, Lynn, we've got another question coming.
Pop it out.
Okay.
Yeah, you seem to half hitch up most of your baits you do. What line do you prefer, mono or fluoro as far as the kinking goes as leader?
Fluorocarbon, all the way. The only reel, I was just looking at it today, the only reel I've got monofilament line on is my little fella's little blue rod. The little Blue Avenger, but it's amazing the amount of fish he manages to pull up on this gear. But yeah, I will use monofilament. This is one of my old retired trout reels. I'll use monofilament for trout. And off the top of my head, I think that's about it. Yellowtail and things like that, I'll use little yakkers and slimies, things like that. I'd fish with this, but otherwise, no, I use braid 100% of the time. In far as the leader, fluorocarbon. I mean, it's a little bit more expensive, but I believe it's worth it. Except for things like your shock leaders, like for live baiting for kingfish, hoodlums, and things like that. Generally, you're going to be fishing quite deep water. They're going to smash it anyway, regardless. But I'll use the lightest leader I can get. It's zero stretch. So you get much more sensitivity and feel. So even in 400 metres of water fishing for blue eye and gemfish and things like that, you are still feeling every one of those bites. Whereas if you were using old style mono, the stretch in that line is just incredible. So you're not going to feel those delicate little taps. You can't tell as much about what's going on in the end of your line. Braid's actually generally stronger. So you won't get too many IGFA rated braids because they'll generally break at more than the PE strength of the braid itself. So if they say 40 kilo, generally you can just about bet that they'll probably break around about 55 to 60 kilos. Again, it's going to be, even the real fine stuff you'll see, it's thinner than 2 kilo monofilament, and it'll be rated for 5 kilo braid. And it's
well, Shimano have a good brand out called Karuah, and they advertise it's 15 times stronger than steel.
Yep.
But there you are. There's
circle hooks definitely have their place, but they are something, again, you have to get your head around using and understand the science behind it. They have come from the longline industry, the tuna longline industry, where you're looking at 700 odd hooks on one line, way out at sea, left for a day or two. They work. They really work when you don't play with them, when you don't strike at the fish, when you don't, you let them do their thing. If you try and help them along, that's when you're going to have trouble with circle hooks.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, shoot away.
So you're saying there now you don't strike. We're up in the Gulf fishing, and we're using circle hooks, and a barra picks up and runs with it. So how far do you want to let it run before?
With circle hooks, I fish with the reels in gear. I don't fish a drag, a light drag or a bait runner or any of that sort of thing. I'll fish with it in gear, and generally the first you'll know is that rod will just buckle over. So you don't need to let them play around with it too long. And barramundi are a fish, as you know, they're an implosion feeder. So that if they're going to eat that bait, they've imploded. It's in the mouth, in the gill rakers. It's already turned and heading back to its snag or what have you. That's the way those fish feed.
So a straight
hang around too long up there, something bigger is going to eat them. So straight
shank, like it's not an offset hook. What do you use that for? Trolling?
Trolling, yes.
Right. Offset, what do you use the hook for?
Generally, you're bait fishing.
So does anyone not understand that?
But it's yes with a but, no with a maybe. So obviously, I've just said with the swimming prawn, I use a straight shank hook because it's more at times akin to trolling because I'm pulling that, I'm constantly working that prawn. I'm not just letting it sit there unless I'm fishing it in a current with a running sinker rig. But generally with that, I will fish it, as I say, exactly like I'd fish a soft plastic. A little ball sinker maybe to get it down in current, but generally unweighed, straight back into structure against pylons, bridges, that sort of thing.
Steve, a little bit of confusion here. If I'm trolling in a boat, what I don't want is the hook at an angle, the barb at an angle, because that's going to twist. So you have the straight. So depending on what you're doing...
It's like a keel of a boat.
I'm not talking trolling. I'm, like Gaz is saying, if you're fishing barra, circle hook, tap, run, let it run, hit.
Yep.
That's what we do.
Yep.
And that works. Saying...
Are you doing a vicious strike, or are you just sort of clicking it into gear and
just locking it in.
Come to it.
Let it run.
Yeah.
6,
That's
8,
exactly
whatever,
right.
As long as you can wait.
It's swimming away from you. So
but not hard. But you're saying that's not
another
that's
thing
not true,
with the your circle hooks. I mean, this is an 8-0 circle hook here. This is a 6-0 suicide. So the sizes are always a bit hinky with the circle hooks as well. But with your circle hook, it's designed so the fish has got it in its mouth, it's swimming away. You want the line to pull the hook out and around. and it's designed to turn around, find purchase in the mouth, and sort of wedge itself into the corner of the jaw. That's where your circle hooks are, with the barramundi, you're finding they're mostly hooked behind the jaws there and so forth. You're not getting gill raker hooks and things like that as you would with J hooks. And again, that's from the longline industry. It's what they're designed to do. They're designed to keep the fish in as good a condition as possible. You don't want bleeding tuna out there on longline hooks because that only attracts sharks. So they're designed to lock into the corner of the jaw, keep the fish in good condition, and to basically fish themselves. So with your barramundi, you let them run. Same with the jewfish of the south would be your barramundi of the south would be your jewfish. Exact same method. Just don't let them monkey around with it too long, because they'll discover something pretty wrong straight away. With your, I don't let it run. I fish my circle hooks in gear. I won't fish straight, really tight line to it. I'll give it a bit of slack, but as much as possible, I'll fish it in gear. And the most of the time, the first thing I know I've got a bite is when the rod's buckled over and the line's peeled.